Welcome back to the Response Drivers Podcast, where we feature top marketing minds and dig into their inspiring stories. Learn how these leaders think and find big ideas to push your results and sales to the next level. Now, let's get started.
Hey, Rick Rapé here, host of the Response Drivers Podcast. Here we're going to dive deep with marketing executives, experts, and innovators to uncover how they approach targeted marketing and use data-driven strategies to acquire and retain customers. We'll talk about what's working, what's changing, and how we can stay ahead in the evolving marketing landscape. This episode is brought to you by RPM Direct Marketing. RPM helps companies master and perfect direct mail marketing and turn it into a predictable, efficient sales channel. For companies interested in using direct mail, the rapid performance method accelerates testing and optimization, delivering higher response rates and more sales at a lower cost. For seasoned mailers, RPM quickly identifies untapped opportunities, innovating for breakthrough performance and significant cost savings. With a proven track record, RPM delivers smarter, more profitable direct mail solutions. Visit rpmdm.com to learn more. Today, I'm super excited about my guest. Mike Kichline is the former co-founder, CEO of Yesler, a tech-focused B2B agency that worked with Microsoft, Google, SAP, Adobe, Amazon, and over 40 major brands. Yesler grew to the largest independent B2B agency in the world with more than 400 people in Seattle, London, Philadelphia, Singapore, Portland, Toronto, and dozens of other remote locations around the US. Yesler was acquired by Accenture in 2020, after which Mike spent several years overseeing the integration of teams and capabilities and leading the evolution of Accenture's B2B marketing services for their Fortune 500 clients. Mike and I have actually known each other for over 10 years as fellow members of EO, which is Entrepreneurs Organization of Seattle. And I've watched Mike, for the past 10 years, kind of in awe of his success. So of course I wanted to corner Mike and ask him some questions and learn what's the secret to Mike's success. So thanks so much for joining me today, Mike.
Thanks, Rick. I'm excited.
Yeah. So let's jump in and I'll start asking you some of my questions. First of all, can you talk a little bit about your journey leading up to founding of Yesler and what experiences kind of shaped your approach to marketing and B2B marketing?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think with a lot of entrepreneurial stories, there's, we talked a little bit about this previously. There's like your serial entrepreneurs who are just always chasing ideas. And then there's people who just kind of find themselves in a place where something seems to make sense. I spent about 10 years after I got out of college. I had a few different degrees, but one was finance and one was marketing. And they didn't, nowadays that's really valuable. Like people look at that and go, this is great because you got this left brain, right brain kind of balance. And this, I call it like the center brain space. If you can actually play a little bit on both sides of the creative and the logical, it's kind of nice. But back when I got out of school, it didn't really it didn't fit. It was like, what do you want to do? Do you want to do accounting and finance, or do you want to be in marketing? And I was a little lost on that for a while. I did a bit of both. And I ended up working in technology, which wasn't really my plan, but started learning about the industry at a software company and having some success there. Started in finance and accounting, went over to marketing and OEM and back to finance and then to partner marketing. And it wasn't until 99 or so, I joined Avenue A. Avenue A became a quantum and Razorfish, and they were a phenomenal agency and success story. To this day, some of the smartest people I've just ever known and worked with. I love that team of people. And there were like 40 people when I joined there. And it was just amazing in the .com period. But it was this place where like everything was all these customer engagements really defined by performance and data. And for the first time, we were really tracking and measuring things in the online space. They were the first to kind of invent the concept of basically embedding a 1-by-1 pixel in all of the online ads so you could track view-based activity after. So it wasn't just click-driven, and that was revolutionary. And so there's so many insights we could come from that.
Wow.
And yeah, it was a crazy time. And I don't know, I had a funny experience there because I was like 28 or 29, but I was one of the older people in the teams. And so I kind of was given these responsibilities. I kind of got all of I got all the hard clients. I got all the not the challenging ones. Like the Microsoft team was massive. They were spending huge amounts of money and doing cutting edge things. And I would usually get the ones that were problematic or in danger of leaving because they didn't understand it or something like that. Because I was kind of a good fixer. So I would come in and resolve the problems and realize what was going on and get everybody on the same page. But what that meant was where most people would have like, they were strategists for like 1 or maybe 2 clients. It got to the point where I had like 8. And it was just insane. And I'd look over and there's like the Microsoft team doing these crazy things. And there's the Nike team and they're like going down to Eugene and doing trust falls with each other on the weekend and climbing rocks and things. And then I've got my, messages from my clients screaming and, telling me I should fire my entire team for something he screwed up. Like that was the world I felt like I inhabited. And when the .com implosion kind of happened and they did some cutbacks, I actually volunteered to step out. I was so burnt out. I was like, I'm going to step out of here. I need a break. And then there really wasn't much to do after that. Like the wreckage of the .com ecosystem was crazy. And I ended up doing some consulting for Real Networks. And I had an opportunity to go out to Microsoft and do some things out there. And the program that I was engaged with out there was, they had a bunch of phrases for them, but in the end, it's basically a customer engagement program to pre-launch for their enterprise customers. It was like, look, when we launch this technology, we want to have customers that have had great experiences and want to have great stories. The challenge is what you need to do is you need to get these customers to work with an unproven pre-release, beta to release candidate, build a software in an actual production space and have an experience with it. So they have a story to tell. Hey, we found that we are, 10% more efficient, or we're saving money, or whatever the story would be to meet the marketing objectives. So I was there to run this program for the Windows Server launch in advance. And as we got through it, one of the senior guys in the group was like, we run these programs all the time out here and they usually fail. But this one's not. And it was because the guy I was working with who kind of framed the program had a totally different way of engaging with these customers. It was like, look, if you give them something for free, that's exactly as much value as they place on it. So if they have other priorities, they'll just go with those. Because one of the things we would give them is some consulting time. And so rather than giving it to them, we actually had them pay a heavily discounted rate for them. And then we required them to come out to Redmond to meet with the product team, which they never got to do because they only talked to the sales guys. And so you built this relationship with the customers. And so by the time the product launched, we pulled like 80 to 85% of these customers into successful stories at launch. So they had this massive book of customer videos and stories and things like that supported the launch, which typically they get 20% maybe. So I was looking at this saying, I think I could build a practice around this, right? Like helping them kind of meet their customers where they are. And there were a couple of people that I had met out there, David and Ika. Dave was running a similar program for early tablet products. And they were in the same space, like hitting some of the same failures that typical Microsoft programs did, but he saw what we were doing and he was like, yeah, I can kind of see this too. And Anika was really involved she was telling a lot of the stories. She ran a lot of the writing and production of content. And so I got asked by another team at Microsoft to come repeat everything we did. So I started a company called Project Line to basically be the space we build out these programs. So that's what I did. And after about a year, I got David and Nikki to come and join me. And I'd started kind of building out other things because I could see that there's a lot of stuff happening out here in this space and there's a lot of needs. And so I was looking at the core things that I thought we could build competencies around, and then also being opportunistic about the types of things we were being asked to do. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So what we evolved to over the next few years was really a consulting and quasi staffing organization for a while. We were just adding people and meeting customer needs, but really trying to centralize around core tenets of things we did really well. We built out a lot of these engagement programs. We started building up teams to really produce a lot of this content, these case studies and customer stories. And then we kind of pulled in a lot of other things. And one of the biggest turning points was a few years in. I had a former colleague reach out and say, "Hey, we've got this problem where I think maybe you could help me out. We've invested like millions of dollars into these tools and platforms that we've built, and we want to try to do is get attribution on our marketing. Like we spend tons of money all over the place, all these POs, but we don't know where it's all going, like specifically. So we built out these tools so all of our marketers can basically tag all of their spend to the various campaigns that are being activated in market. And here's what we've learned. We've learned marketers are really, really bad at using tools. That's pretty much what we've learned. It's all inconsistent. None of it's uniform. We can't really use much of the data to figure things out. So we were thinking maybe you could get a few people to help us just be the front end for this. And so I thought about that and I came back and said, look, I think, first of all, yeah, we can do this. Second of all, I don't think the way you want to do it makes sense. Because what you guys always want is a just add water solution. You don't want to do anything. You just want to like throw somebody in there and make it happen. This is not the most exciting set of responsibilities. Like you're just arms deep in spreadsheets and tools and platforms. So you need really smart people, but it's not really exciting job. So what you need is it's a great entry level opportunity to build younger teams, to kind of build experience in marketing capabilities and move them up. So it was one of the first managed service programs at Microsoft. We got them to basically, hire a group of people that were fairly junior to kind of start aligning with the regions across the US and Microsoft or the various industry segments and be their, specialist to set up all their campaigns and these tools and platforms and deliver the reporting to them. And in a few years that went from, I know our first pilot of like 4 or 5 people. And after a few years, I think we had about 60 people running these engagement. Like we kind of owned this service across Microsoft. And at the same time, we continued to like build the content pieces and grow the organization.
Is this when Yesler sort of started out of is this what inspired the beginning of Yesler?
Not quite, but it's instrumental in that because a few years later, we got a call. We were really Microsoft specific, and we had a few clients here and there that we were doing some things with, but they're just, they're just like the sun, man. It's just this center of mass that it was good and bad. Like we just continued to grow out there, which was great. It wasn't.
Yes.
There's a ton of competition, but part of what we differentiated with was do things you do very well. There were tons of people out there that kind of just did whatever, but they never really invested in creating systemic knowledge, right? That they could replicate. So we really leaned into that. So most of our employees were full-time employees, even if they were on contracts, how Microsoft would choose to employ them. They were our employees. And we trained them and we developed them into these competencies. So we were building out a lot of these writings and editorial services and doing tons of case studies and more stories. And so there's huge pieces of the business. And we got a lead came in from someone at SAP, and they were asking a couple of questions that were really, really, really specific. And I was like, nobody knows we're doing this unless they knew from Microsoft. Turned out to be somebody who'd left Microsoft to go there and knew our work and was like, got into SAP and was like, they have the exact same problem. Like they aren't tracking any of their spend accordingly. And so we went and pitched out there to build, we called it Campaign Desk. We built a campaign desk for them. And then once you have that, you can now sell in all your other services. It's like, hey, we can tell our stories. Hey, we can run these engagements for you. We can start reaching out to all of your partner communities and we can do all your marketing in this space. So now we have these 2 big enterprise organizations that were really growing. And where Yesler came in was around 2012. We started seeing marketing automation and MarTech was emerging in force. But our clients were using their own stuff, or they weren't really or SAP was just kind of, it ain't broken yet. So they weren't really ready to jump in. But we knew that was where things were going to go. Dave was really instrumental in our organization of, I was heads down on a lot of client stuff and building up pieces. And he was looking at going, I think like we need to think about these MarTech platforms and what we could do there, because they're going to want it. They just don't yet. So we decided to follow, there's the MVP model, the minimum viable product model. And we said, well, what if we, actually launch an actual agency and didn't do it inside of our current clients at all? We'll just go to market. We'll build a small team internally. What do we need? Well, we need to probably get really good with an implementation of, let's choose what we feel a good player is for the space. So we picked Marketo and Salesforce, surprisingly, even though Microsoft, was, in play with, their own platforms. We were like, let's go outside of those. Let's use Salesforce and Marketo. And let's write 4 or 5 really good pieces of content about the evolution of B2B marketing and how MarTech influences it. And that's our go-to-market plan. Thinking that, I don't think that we think it was really going to work. I mean, you're like, I don't know. We'll see what happens. It's small.
Well, it was an experiment, which is great. In business, that's what we have to do, right? We have to launch some experiments, and sometimes you fail, but you always learn. And it sounds like you guys were willing to do that. Yeah.
And we got some traction, and we got a couple of clients that were pretty gung ho. We got an early company a tech company that had kind of leaned into, it was a startup, but they had good funding and leaned into it. And at the time what we did was just turn the screen around. It was great. It's like, here's how you showed up. Here's our content that you downloaded, and here's who you forwarded to. Like, we could show them the journey of their own space as a customer to say, you could do this with your customers. You can manage this customer journey, and you can know, like, once you did this, we reached out to you this way.
Yeah.
Once you did this, then we sent you this. Once you did this, we called you. Or we could show them the path in a simple form.
I'm working with a B2B company right now that they literally showed me that I want to work with them based on how they interacted and acquired me as a customer. It was so impressive. I was like, wow, I need to do that for my company as well.
It's a powerful space. And
oh yeah. Well, when somebody does it differently and noticeably differently and better, it stands out, right? Like, because we all get a lot of, junk email and things that don't work, and we recognize those also. Well,
and in those early days, the worst part about marketing automation was the name, because people didn't know what that meant, and what we would always tell them, look, if your marketing is crap, all you're going to do is automate crap to scale. Congratulations. Right. So it doesn't help you. And most people got it wrong because they didn't really know how to use it. And so we realized once we got momentum, and we were like, we're getting to this tipping point with our core customers where they're starting to be curious about this as well. I think what we should do is take all of these teams that are essentially doing this, just not on these platforms. And we need to rebrand them from Project Line into the agency. And basically, let's just take what are the agency related services that align. So we just did a reorganization, which wasn't really reorg. It was just more of a rebrand of like, we have this other brand. Let's pull everybody over and create the space within the actual agency for the stuff that we're doing. And it was funny because, I always say that, like with Microsoft, it was like some of our clients knew we were doing this and were really intrigued by it. We had some stalwarts that were really, thought it was fantastic. But most of our clients, when we went to, like, we didn't even tell them right away. We just did it. And then after, a few months, we're like, we have a naming issue, like, who they think they work for and who the client's representing and stuff. So we said, we need to have comms with their customers. And talk to them about this. And we said, look, here's what we're doing. We have this brand, which is going to continue in the consulting and kind of bespoke services you need. And then we have Yesler, and they do these specific things in B2B marketing, and our teams are aligned. And they'd be like, oh, that's great. Cool. And then they'd kind of go, wait, is this going to cost me more money? I'd be like, no. So nothing's changing. Or do I have to work with different people? No, it's all the same. We're doing this. And like 85% and 90% are like, oh, well, cool, good. Well, good luck with that thing.
Right.
Congratulations.
Right.
But there were about like 10 to 15% of customers they would listen really intently, and they go, and be like, that's really smart, because nobody here is doing this yet. And I want to use you to do this more. It had an amazing lift, not for everybody, but for the people that were starting to think about that. It was a real accelerator for because the world out at the enterprise organizations was one where you did what they asked you to do typically, and to show up and say we're not only ahead of you, but we're investing in doing things ahead of when you need them was not typical. And it was a real help to our acceleration of growth within those areas. So that was great. Then we started leaning into the platforms and building out those capabilities. And then we got a project with Google, which was based around content. Somebody there read a piece of our content, which was about, honestly, it was about like, how do you track? We were the first people to kind of play around with Marketo and figure out how you could actually track. They had a blind spot with how their platform tracked activity, and it was on mobile. They weren't, hadn't quite figured it out, but it was in there. One of our guys figured out how you could actually set up your campaigns to still track on mobile. So we published some content about it, and someone at Google was like, hey, could you come out here and do like a project with us to kind of educate our teams? And we did a gig out there to kind of like roll up the sleeves and show them how to do it. And,
clearly there must've been some buzz in that world, at the enterprise level. People were talking about you and sharing information about what was going on. So
yeah,
I was also,
later we went from, tens of thousands of dollars to, by the time, 5 or 6 years, I think we were, a little over 10 million in engagement revenue with them. So it was like this.
Wow. Yeah.
Just building out all the things we did at all the other places. Right.
Yeah. Right. Well, I was going to ask you, because you scaled the business so quickly from 2012 to 2019 or so when you sold to Accenture. Yeah. You scaled it to be one of the largest B2B marketing agency in the world, which is an absolutely amazing accomplishment. I wanted to ask you, what were some of the other key strategies that you used to accomplish that scale so quickly?
Yeah, I mean, we had a few things we really believed in. First of all, was you just go back to the very beginning. It was around culture and people. In the very early days, we hired people that we kind of knew and liked and respected, and like attracts like, and you create a personality and a culture around the things that are meaningful. We had a huge investment in time with each other. We had a huge investment in supporting our community. We tended to attract people that shared our expectations and values.
Yeah,
we leaned into that a lot. That was huge, and it's not a matter of
A players hire A players, don't they?
Yeah, they do, and this was one of those lessons from Rabbit Away we used to joke about back then was your hiring philosophy, and we talked about it at Project Line Yesler. It was like smart and nice. It sounds, the resume still needs to hold up, but like I've met a lot of smart people, met a lot of nice people. I've met some smart people that could come in and totally kick ass, and they're going to go 5 people on the way, and it's just not worth it. Right. I've met some wonderfully nice people. They're probably not, I'll go to dinner, but they're probably not going to be the ones that can really own and drive whatever solutions and initiatives you're trying to build around. But if you have both, generally, you minimize conflict and drama. People collaborate well together. They problem solve. They find solutions. And we just really believed in that. Like, let's build a culture where everybody here is, it's not like, oh man, that guy's really smart. Yeah, we're all really smart. He's got some great plans and solutions. She's really good at this, but it's not like the expectation is everybody is really good at collaborating, communicating, and we all like them, that was a huge part of how we built the organization. The other was we had a lot of transparency.
That's sort of really interesting and refreshing, I guess, to hear that the looking for nice people as opposed to just smart people. I mean, you don't hear that every day. That's really really noteworthy.
Everybody's always looking for like, who's the best candidate, and which you still do. You just add a couple more qualifiers to it.
Yeah.
And you don't always know for sure, and it's not a universal constant, but you lean in. You just basically say, for the most part, what we're trying to do is find people that we genuinely, enjoy. And one of my favorite things.
Well, people don't always reveal that they're not nice right off the bat.
Yeah. It's true.
Did you have to be tough with people sometimes when they came on and you found out that they weren't nice, and you had to make, decisions to undo some things?
Yeah, we had a couple of hard ones over the years that I mean, everybody does, on the timeline, it's always going to happen where you have somewhere like, man, that didn't. But I also, would reflect on it and say, at least for me, anytime anytime I went against my gut on something, it never ended well. Like, there's something about, like, if you really, if you
trusted your intuition
point, if you feel like you reach a point where your intuition has served you well, then you kind of have to. It's healthy for you to trust that. There were a few times where made some really hard decisions just because something didn't feel 100%. I never regretted not making those decisions. I did.
Right.
The ones where I overrode that intuition, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for the most part, I think getting talent and getting people, that's a big part of it. Now, it can also work the other way around.
Huge part, for sure.
People feel like, oh, I really like this person. It's like, why? Like, it's a classic interview challenge, but like, oh, I like this person. Well, I like them too, but what's their capability? Like, what, that's one of those challenges in the interview process that people don't really know how to do it well and understand what they're looking for. But sometimes they do the opposite, right? They look totally at their skill and capability, and they don't actually think about the person.
Mm-hmm.
We in the very early days, David and Nika and I, and Nika was a huge proponent of this, which was fantastic. It was about, the classic, what's your mission statement? What do you. I'm not dismissing that out of hand. It's like, it is valuable, but you have to mean it. It has to be genuine. And for us, we built one that we did cement the culture of the organization and our plan around. And it was in its simplest form. It was like, the commitment to have a positive impact on the people we work for, the people we work with, and the global community. And we had a long form of that, but that was the short. And we measured that every year. Like, how are we doing? How are we supporting our clients? Are we meeting their expectations? Are we getting them promoted? Are we making them happy? Like, like, that's driving business. Are we positively impacting the people we work with, each other? Are we sure? Are we elevating people? Are people happy? Are they being heard? And then the global community, we had like 4 pillars of community engagement that we focused around, which was children, homelessness, food insecurity, and pets, because we had so many animal lovers. And like, those were, every year we donated money and time to causes that were aligned with those things.
Yeah.
That was how we measured ourselves, was like, how are we supporting our clients and how are we supporting each other and how we're supporting the world around us.
Yeah.
Use scorecards.
I feel like the first two are fairly common in that, and how agencies approach their work in the world. The last one I think is a little bit less common and, more unique. Do you think that particular pillar of your mission statement made a big difference?
Yeah. Yeah. Because from the very beginning, we put purpose and time and investment into that monthly, quarterly, yearly. And it was meaningful. It kept people with the company for a very long time because they liked being part of an organization that was very genuine about supporting community around them. It wasn't just hey, you're doing a fundraiser for a thing. And,
well, I guess it makes it feel like you're motivated by not just financial success, not just money and revenue and growth and the business growth that benefits the owner, but it's also like you're embracing a bigger picture, a larger need.
Yeah. And there's where you start and there's where we finish. I mean, it's, we did this for about 17 years until we joined Accenture. In the early days, we had, 10 or 20 or 30 people. It's very different when you have like 200, 300, 400, right? Like, so the shift from small and, familial to like large and corporate is tricky to navigate well, I think, because you can lose that identity. Because you do go in those early days where it's like you're trying to just be in a space where is everybody enjoying themselves? Are we doing things that are fulfilling personally? Like it isn't about the money. And then you reach a point where you're like large enough where it has to be because you've got an ecosystem that like, well, we have to hit these goals because I have commitments to people and to payroll and to, investments we're making in our development and growth. And it was, I think, some of the most challenging times we had. I don't think they were challenging for the business, but I think for my mental space, for your mental health is like how, in some of those growth phases where you're like, how can we aim for these large objectives and how do we continue to fulfill these things where you are feeling like you're obviously more corporate, but still have these close personal relationships and this community of people.
Yeah.
When you were 15, 20 people. And it's a tough balance, but I think we did that really well. I know we're probably all biased about it. I try to be really honest about some of the blind spots we had, but I think we did it well.
Well, it sounds like it. It sounds like you were extremely successful at growing the business and building a huge successful team. So I think you can give yourself a big pat on the back. I wanted to dig in a little bit more though, just out of curiosity. Yeah. I mean, I let my curiosity guide me. And I think that idea that you said, Yesler went from a small familial agency of 10 people up to 200 with offices all over the world. It leads me to the question of, what other significant challenges did you face as you were growing, and, what comes to mind and how did you overcome those things?
I mean, I know that 2008, 2009 was a tricky one. We grew, but we shifted our mindset a lot. Like looked at and said, well, I mean, some of it was the space we were in. We were fortunate because when you're in the services space, when things are going well for your clients and they have budget, there's plenty of things to do. And when things are tight and they don't have a lot of money, it's obviously difficult. But what we thought about was, well, let's just think about this differently. If they don't have as much to spend, if they've got to make harder decisions, just be the best choice. Just be the best at what you do. If they're, we want to be the last thing they remove from the budget. If they've, and when I referenced earlier that investment in creating your own processes and your own institutional knowledge that you could share. Like we took a lot of pride in the fact that, in the Microsoft ecosystem, for example, like just because you work at Microsoft doesn't mean you have a clue what anybody else is doing. It's a giant organization. And we would
Right.
find, I remember being in a meeting with dated like it was Office 12 and Vista. And like we were running programs for both of them. And I was in a meeting and somebody was like, man, we should probably figure out how we can align our customer set because there's a great Better Together story. And we don't know how to do, like, does anybody know anybody who's running that out? And we were like, I you to right after the meeting, like you guys should talk. We're already doing that. Like we've already built a list of like which customers you should probably collaborate on because you guys don't talk to each other because there's no incentive or like no incentive to do that within the organization because you're so heads down. So by looking at it and saying, how can we make our customers smarter? How can we create connections that we see that you don't? Because we cross over organizational boundaries that you don't, right? So by doing that, it gave us an opportunity to add value and stay really connected. So we would have clients that would have less budget, but we might actually get more of it because we were able to look and say, well, we're not going to hire people. That's the other thing. They're actually tightening up their own internal stuff. So we found paths to go, how do we take these negative
situations and
and where do we find momentum in these and positives? And we did that pretty well through those years.
It sounds like you guys were really great at just imagining what's coming next and understanding the environment and sort of future, seeing the future a little bit and then positioning yourself for where things were going, which is, that's an amazing skill.
Yeah, we tried and we weren't always right. I mean, one of the bigger failures we had was during, maybe it was 2009, 10 through like 2012 or 13. A lot of the work that we were doing in these platforms and tools was adjacent to kind of an emergent push in business intelligence, right? That was the phrase at the time. We want BI solutions. We have all this data. We need like to build huge repositories and have actionable reporting and insights being pulled out of these databases that can tell and so BI was where everybody was investing a lot of their funds and you needed like dev teams to build out these comprehensive database solutions. And it was really adjacent to what we were doing. And we were working with a lot of customers that needed that. And so we thought that was a good extension of our work. It wasn't. And we invested in that. We built teams around it. And there were a couple of failures to that. One was like myself and David Nika, that's not in our personal wheelhouse. Like we're not developers. We understood the value of data and analytics and reporting, but it wasn't like our specific sweet spot. So we hired somebody to kind of build and run that. And while they were brilliant in the technical aspect, they weren't good with a P&L. They weren't good at aligning like skill sets to products. We'd have a project that would need 10 different skill sets and we only had 4. So then it would be like, well, I need to get these other people hired on board. And it was like, but they're not, it's just for little bits and pieces, right? That we can't, it just didn't fit. And we chased that for a couple of years before going, this is not our space. And what's funny is down the road as marketing automation became more prevalent in the later half, a lot of that got kind of built into the solutions. You still needed even deeper levels of analytics and reporting, but you didn't need dev teams. And the work that we did do on the development side was more like, HTML and templating and things like that just helped kind of turn on a lot of the capabilities within the system. That was a much easier kind of space to be technical in, so to speak. But yeah, that didn't work at all, but it seemed like good, right? One of the things that we did that also helped us a lot, we always put a 5-year plan together. And the 5-year plan was not like a constant 5. Like if we were to do it right now, it'd be the 2030 plan. 5 years from now. And we talked about, we want to be this size. We want to have this revenue. We want to have 10 more enterprise clients, whatever the goals were. We want to, we want to have 50% of employees, and there were big picture things, and we want to emphasize these capabilities. And every year we would track to that. And 2 years in, you'd be like, hey, out of these 5 core goals, we're on track for these 2. We're ahead of pace on this one. We haven't even started this one. And BI, when it was in that mix, it was like one that we were like, we're underperforming. And then when we turned it off, like we kept it on the card. So every year we have our annual meeting and like our quarterly reviews and our leadership team, like we did spend time on it, but it was always like, yep, that one got crossed off the list, because it's a good reminder, right? That this is part of the vision. This was removed for the right reasons. These are the things we're now doubling into and emphasizing in that. And so it gave you a more complete picture. And then when we get to year 4, we would start thinking about what's our next. So we went through like 3 of those in our evolution, right?
Wow.
What's funny is we realized I talked to Dave and Anika about this. We always kind of like, more often than not, we got there. Like,
yeah, those things are super powerful. I'm a huge believer in that true north vision, sort of creating that future, writing down what the future state is going to be, or that you want it to be, and then having that and referring back to it regularly.
Yeah,
keeps everyone focused on what we're doing and where we're going, and miraculously sometimes things just fall into place. It must be law of attraction things. I'm not a big believer in all of that, but it seems to be how things work. I guess at least in
I
my
think having
experience.
that North Star is valuable. Like, and you don't always have to be staring at it. I remember the planning meeting in early Yesler where we were creating our identity, and we had like people in the room, and everybody's like, we're trying to figure out like, what do we truly want to make our identity about, and all this stuff. And finally, I think I just at one point I said, here's what we want to be. Just the best B2B agency in the world. That's it.
Well, that's a big one.
But
you picked a big goal. But
it's not that you get there. It's where you're always trying to go.
You're striving for that. Yeah.
That's true. Like, it's simple. It's like, is what we're doing to serve the mission of trying to be the best B2B agency in the world. And if it's not, then does it stack up to what, always the goal. It's never achieved. It's like the North Star. You're always going that direction. You're never going to get there, but it guides you to why am I walking in this direction? Why am I moving in this direction?
Yeah, that's great. And thinking about progress, not perfection, and the fact that these goals take a long time. It's amazing what a week seems to go by really quickly. A month seems to go by really quickly, but years and 5 years, you can accomplish an amazing amount of things.
That was one of the best Bill Gates quotes of all time. I've referenced him, but over and over, he said, it was something along the lines of, people overestimate what they can accomplish in a year and underestimate what they can do in 10.
Right. Oh, wow.
And it doesn't even have to be 10, 3, 5, but a year. I mean, we're old enough now that like a year is not that long, man. And when you set these arbitrary goals that define whether you are successful as a person, whether you're successful as an organization based on how the year went, you invariably, unless you kind of game the system and you hit the year with a lot of momentum and it's going to be good, in which case you're measuring anything other than did I maintain the momentum. But if you're truly trying to create growth and change over time, I don't know, a year is good, but where is that going to take you? Because that gives you some grace to kind of have some things happen that you don't expect and navigate them and recover from them or maintain them.
Yeah. Having quarterly goals is great. And sometimes you hit them and sometimes you miss them, but as long as you're still got that distant goal in mind and you're moving in the right direction, I think that makes this a massive, massive difference. Even if you miss this quarter's goals, you can reevaluate, you can pivot, adjust, and keep after it. I think that's very, very wise.
The quarters are valuable, the years are valuable, but they have to be in service of something larger. And you can't, if you miss, that's fine. It's no different than, the reason why is what you need to understand. The why is very valuable. And it's no different than when I would have, we're a services business. Everything we do is based on people, and having good people is really necessary. And
Mm.
People are going to leave.
Yeah.
I was always really pragmatic about that. It's like, if someone works for us for 6 months or 6 years and they go to something else, and I had people that would go, God, I have this amazing opportunity. They're going to pay me a bunch of money or do something I really want to do, or it's just a next step for me that I really want. And if I don't have that for them, like if I do, awesome. But if I don't, I don't own all the opportunities. But I looked at it as like, if your time here, if you learned things here that took you to the next level as in your career as a person, that you can now go make more money, own responsibilities that are exciting to you and meaningful, work in another industry that you really want to go do. Like, I did my job. Like, I was excited for you. Now, so the reason they left was really important. Now, if they left, they didn't feel heard, or they didn't feel respected, or they felt like something was not going well, or that was concern that I didn't like. I needed to understand that, and it wasn't accurate. You can't just take not everybody has a good experience all the time, but you got to go. And if you listen to the people that are often in the middle of it, each side has its bias, right?
Sure.
And you can't just take it all face value, but recognize something was there that didn't work.
Well, a lot of times people don't quit their job; they quit their boss, right? That's a true statement, and
very true.
It certainly resonates with me. I mean,
those areas, that give you a little warnings. You go, okay, do we have a gap in the leadership here? Is one of our managers kind of struggling to really understand people?
Yeah,
that was something to be paying attention to.
Yeah. Wow. Everything you're talking about is super fascinating. And I want to keep talking about those things, but I also don't want this to be a 4-hour podcast episode. So I'm going to keep asking you a couple more questions. I mean,
no problem.
This is solid gold though, Mike. I really appreciate your sharing your wisdom with us. Let me see. I guess I want to ask you, because you seem to be a visionary. I want to talk a little bit about B2B marketing.
Yeah.
And say, obviously you saw it evolve dramatically over the past decade. Where do you see things going from here? What trends do you think are happening? What are the things that are coming that are going to shape B2B marketing in the next 5 to 10 years? Does anything come to mind?
Yeah. I mean, obviously the easy answer basis is AI, and it obviously will, but I think what's more relevant to that is, figuring out how to not let AI take the human element out of marketing. AI is really good at taking things that have already been created and repurposing them into something.
Yeah.
What it's not good at yet, and I think it's much further away than people believe. That's my own personal opinion based on conversations I've had, but stuff I've read. It's not good at creating out of nothing. Right.
Yeah. Truly innovative thinking.
Yeah. That's where humor comes in. That's where emotional response comes in. It's the crazy idea. And all of our ideas are inherently based in something, that we've experienced or some amalgamation of those. But humans are different from AI. It's not as, a big pile of data that I'm pulling a prescribed out of a prompt. It's that's the thing that I think people do well. And if you look across the landscape of, especially in B2B marketing, I mean, you can find a million articles about how it's just there's just so much crap out there. Everybody's realized you need content, which is great, because back when we started, nobody quite got that yet. Well, congratulations. We won that battle. But the war's still going on because now there's just too much of it and none of it is compelling.
Yeah.
Like, you can read content that, effectively tells you the information that you want to, transmit to the public.
Mm-hmm.
That's not interesting. Like, it doesn't, and very often it solves it, or solves it. It runs into the same problem that I think most product companies struggle with. And then we saw this in tech all the time, that they're built fundamentally, most tech companies are built by engineers. They love their product and they will tell you everything about it. And you're like, I don't care. Like you're assuming I know how your product will solve my pain point. If you want to talk to me about like, if you can approach me and say, I understand you have this pain point and you need to solve these things, and it's not going to help unless this is resolved for you. And what we've done is like, if you shift the narrative, like to really think first and foremost about what is your customer experiencing and how does whatever you're doing address that, then you have something to say. But you still need to do that in a genuine and meaningful way that's conversational. That's, you know, it's not too long, it's not too short. It like, that's hard. It genuinely is. It's hard for humans to do. And the world right now is really generating a lot of AI content. It's not all bad, but there's a lot of it that's just not particularly memorable either.
Yeah.
It's stuff.
Well, I think it's from my perspective as a B2B company selling to businesses. I mean, it's so tricky to break through the digital clutter and get people's attention, obviously, first of all. And so you want to be short and to the point and get right to the message. But then you also have to have credibility and build credibility and explain who you work for and why you should be listening to me or why you should engage. And there's so much so many touches that have to happen in B2B marketing. You have to reach people over and over and over and over again before you actually break through. I think that's super fascinating.
Advocacy is the back half of that. Like that's where you get a lot of the genuine piece, customer advocacy, even employee advocacy. And it blew my mind over the years. And Microsoft was as good as anybody, but you get into a lot of these, you know, whether we're with F5 or Google or anybody, right? They want these customer stories. Man, it was always one of the first things that they pulled budget from. It was like for 20 years, it was always one of these areas that they knew they needed, but it's always a little more expensive because it is high touch. You need to create a program around it. You can't just call somebody, hey man, you want to tell a story? Like it's just not how it works. You need to actually invest in an infrastructure that creates processes for advocacy across the organization. So you have a framework that this is how we run these programs. This is how we nurture our customers to prepare them to be available for these types of stories. And it's mutually beneficial to both of us. It's not just me asking for stuff. And that's an investment. And they would inherently always try to, that was the one that was always, they're cutting the corners on and drive you crazy because then when push came to shove, the stories were what they really wanted.
Yeah.
It worked.
And those things are hugely valuable in the sales process.
Yes.
But it's not directly tied to ROI, so it's pretty difficult to track it. That's where it gets really tricky, right? We have to, in direct marketing, we're tracking everything, looking for the ROI, and it's hard to do in B2B marketing. It's not as easy. All right. Well, let me ask you another quick question and hopefully moving towards the end of our interview. But I just wanted to ask you, with this amazing career you've had with Yesler, what advice would you give to like a young entrepreneur or a young marketing person who's trying to build and scale their business in this competitive landscape? I guess you've touched on a lot of things already that would be great advice. But and I know you don't love giving advice, but I'm gonna. You told me yesterday, and I am asking you a question. Give me advice.
It's funny, like I said.
This is for a young person though, so it's a worthy cause, Mike. Where I think you have a lot of value to offer a young person. So think about someone in their 20s.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean. I don't know. The first thing that comes to mind is you probably know more than you think, but you probably also know less than you think too. Finding the difference between those two is kind of challenging.
Yeah.
I think that sometimes the hardest part of growing a business is is just sticking to it. And, you're going to hit plateaus and phases. And if I reflect back on one of the hardest ones for me to overcome, and it took me a while, was the classic get out of your own way. You're not the smart, you're not the smartest guy. You don't know how to do everything. So at a certain point, you got to figure out how to create redundancy. It's better for you to not do everything. I used to call it the Atlas complex, right? You carry the whole world around. I can carry this whole world. And at a certain level, like there's statues of Atlas and it's impressive. And then you realize it's not.
Yeah.
You have nowhere to put it. Like you're stuck with it. You're carrying the whole world on your shoulders. And the reality is it looks impressive, but it's not because you're miserable. And
it creates
nobody else can carry around, and there's nowhere to set down without wrecking stuff. So
it creates a flaw in the organization. If the organization is a system, it creates a bottleneck. And I'm certainly guilty of this. This is something that I need to work on. So
it's a self-importance kind of thing that is valuable to helping you be successful. But at a certain point, you have to figure out how do I separate out the stuff that I don't need to do. That's hard, but it's necessary.
Yeah.
And it hits everyone at a different phase of growth. But I think that's really important. The other thing.
Well, I heard you talking about, I want to just go back to some of the things that you said earlier briefly, because I heard you chased a lot of opportunities and you took a lot of risks in your younger career. You saw opportunity and you would go after it and see what would happen. And I think that's where entrepreneurship starts, is the willingness to take some risks and to try things and maybe fail sometimes. And that's okay, as long as you're learning and moving forward.
I'm a fan of what I call the rule of three. I was talking with somebody about this last night at a thing, and we struggle with this when we join Accenture, and people are struggling with, if all your business shifts and where you're going with it and which pieces are going to continue. And I one day I said, look, here's the thing. It's either strategic, it's profitable, or it's got growth objectives. Pick any two, because I can't work. They're not going to work with one. And when you're thinking about the things where you want to spend your time in a business, I actually think that if you can get all three, like that's a home run, right? But the reality is, if people talk about, it's so strategic. How strategic is it if you're struggling to pull enough money out of it and it's not growing anywhere? I mean, if it's growth oriented, but you're not making any money, it's not super strategic. Like the only one that kind of has a little value is if it's profitable, but it's not particularly strategic and not growing, where it's a good, run it, but use what you're getting out of that to build stuff that are those other things, right? If you gotta have, I personally believe that you've got to have at least two of those qualifiers in order to really be aligned. And it's funny, sometimes people look at that and the light kind of goes on. And never really thought about it that way. And what helps you realize, like, what am I chasing that's not helpful?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I think, and that's another thing that came through in something you said earlier is the ability to focus and to stay focused on certain things that are important and to say no to the things that aren't important. That's a very, very critical lesson that entrepreneurs seem to learn the hard way, usually.
And I gravitate to yes. Like, I really, really, I do. And it is hard.
Totally.
Because and there were times, but there's this, is it a yes within the sphere of what you feel confident in? There were things that we were asked to do. We're like, we haven't really done that before. And I don't know if we know how to do it, but I would say,
I know when you're serving a big client like Microsoft, there's people that ask you for all kinds of things. And, hey, do you do signage? And you want to say, absolutely. And you're like, no, I don't do signage. I don't do that.
But if it's in your space and you're like, I haven't done it. I know that people are doing it and we haven't. But you look at it and go, I think somebody else coming in here isn't going to know how to do it any better. We're smart people.
Yeah.
Like, we can figure this out. And it actually is adjacent to what we it fits. Now, if it's
Sure.
way out there, of course not.
Yeah.
Certain point leaning in saying, we'll figure it out. We're smart.
Oh yeah. That's how we innovate all the time. A client has a need and there isn't a solution available, and we have to build it and custom build something, for a client. And then that becomes a capability that we can roll out and scale up for other people.
Yeah.
So
Fine line.
wow, Mike, this has been so great. And I have just one more last question for you before we wrap it up.
Sure.
And, I want to pretend that we're at an awards banquet, like the Oscars or the Emmys, and you're awarded a Lifetime Achievement Award. And for everything that you've done up to this point, who would you thank in your acceptance speech?
Man.
It's a big question, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think we're all the product of influences that we don't even recognize a lot of time. I mean, the easy one for me is I had two partners, and it's really funny because I know plenty of horror stories of people who had partnerships. And I also am a big fan of there were three of us, and three is interesting. We were really different people, but we shared the same values. Like, very much. We cared about the same things, even though our personalities are radically different. And at any point in time, if any two of us were not on the same page or frustrated, there were times Dave and I were like kind of pissed off at each other about certain things. Someone else could be the communicator. Someone else could mediate and arbitrate. So like Anika she could talk to Dave and talk to me and get on the same page. I would arbitrate between something they were frustrated with each other about.
There was a tiebreaker. If it was just a partnership, two people, it could have been a deadlock tie. Yeah,
the two of them were huge. I mean, I would not have been able to accomplish this without the two of them. And I think we were all incredibly instrumental in helping each other get to this point. They would be phenomenal influences on me. That's an easy one for me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks, Rick.
We've been talking with Mike Kichline, former CEO of Yesler, a rapid growth B2B marketing agency serving over 40 amazing brands, and Project Line Services before Yesler, a consulting and staffing company. He's an incredible entrepreneur, and if you have the opportunity to work with Mike in the future, I would highly encourage you to take it. So, all right, Mike, thank you very much for this time and this opportunity to learn from you, and we'll talk to you later.
Thanks, Rick. It was a fun time.
That's a wrap for this episode of Response Drivers. Thanks for tuning in. If you found today's insights valuable, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're enjoying the show, we'd love it if you left a review. Got a question or a topic you'd like us to cover? Just drop us a message at responsedrivers@rpmdm.com. Until next time, keep driving response and making your marketing work smarter.